First off, I must apologize. I am recording during the day, so things could be a bit noisy. My dog is going to bark, etc. I'm going to try go through this video as quickly as possible. This is all about how to use the login system with the security providers, etc. in Wappler. This is version 2.4.5. I've got a database, which is where we're starting. So there's my database. Basically, I've got a table for users, and then I've got a table for extra user data, such as their first name, last name, email. The first table only takes the physical login and the password. They've got an auto incrementing ID on both, and as you can see that there is a foreign key here, which means that I'm going to have to write to both of these tables simultaneously in the same insert query. Otherwise, obviously, it won't work. You can't write data to here and not here, and vice versa. It's all cascading. These tables down over here, you don't really need to worry about right now. This is something I'll be dealing with later. Right now, we're just dealing with this. The only thing that you need to take note of here, this is SHA512. I'm going to be putting in a SHA512 hashed password within here. I know we're busy having discussions on the forum right now about the security of passwords, but for now that's the way I'm going about it. Let's go into Wappler. We're going to start off with a new blank project. We're going to call this project WapVids. Project folder is already there. Save. And we start off with a blank HTML file. I don't like this first HTML file. I'm going to close it. The reason why, it doesn't have the bootstrap attached, it doesn't have any of the frameworks, etc. So I just don't bother with it. I literally open it and I delete the first index HTML straight away. I'm then going to go to my project settings down here, and I'm going to set this up. This is actually WapVids. Relative to site root, server model I normally use is PHP. The frameworks I don't know why sometimes it does this. I'm going to leave that for now, save it, go back in, go back to frameworks, and it's cleared out, otherwise it won't work. Put in my app connect, put in my bootstrap as a CDN, and I'm going to go set up my target. My target is my FTP server, so it's going to be WapVids server over there. It's my own server, it's not using Docker. The web server URL is going to be wapvids.com. However, this does require the http:// or the HTTPS. It's an FTP server. When you're first starting out, I've noticed a lot of people on the forum, they start off trying to do their first FTP connection ever with one of these. As a starting point, I would suggest you start out with FTP first. If things work perfectly, you can always upscale that and put your security on, etc. Wapvids.com. Make sure this does not have HTTP, it'll break it completely. It could have FTP://. The port, if you know that you're using a different port, go ahead and pop it in there. But for me, I'm using the standard port. Put in your username. Put in your password over there. Remote directory. If you're using an Apache web server, 99% of the time this is going to be public_HTML. Test the connection. Should go through. Connection successful. If you find that you're on a Windows machine and it starts off and you just get the one line at the top and it never goes anywhere, please make sure that if you're running McAfee antivirus solution especially, or any antivirus solution, quite often it causes this to stop. It causes the outputs to stop quite often. I would suggest that you disable it for the Wappler install directory. So put a an entry into your, to like whitelist that area in your exceptions. Save that. I've now made a new target, so I have to change the target to the Wappler one over there. So at this point everything should be set up to run. I don't need a file open at this point. This server actions area, the file area, and the app connect area that normally sits over here are very, very different areas. The app connect and the document you got open obviously are very relative to one another. The server connect is not relative to what you're doing. You connect these to the app connect side, and then the app connect connects it to the actual page. So just to prove a sort of point, I'm not even going to have a file open to create my first action. The first action, it would make logical sense that I do the login action. However, if you recall during the database discussion, we are hashing this password that goes in here. Right now my table has absolutely nothing inside it. It's totally empty. I can't just go ahead and put in an entry over here within PHP my admin, because I don't know what the hash is actually going to work out to be once the salt goes on it, etc. Therefore I'm going to have to start out with my first action rather being the add a user action, and then work my way backwards. So I can add a user, it then hashes the password, enters it into the database, and then I can work on my login script. So let's create a folder to keep things nice and tidy. The folder, I'm going to call it BE for backend, act for actions. Within there I'm going to add another folder. These are going to be my user actions, act. Obviously I'm just trying to keep things tidy so it's easier to work with later. I'm going to add my first script into there. This is going to be the add a user script. Within the script, what do I need? In order to add a user, I need to insert data to the database, which is going to come from a form. So in the end of the day, I'm going to have a database connection before I even start anything on here. You don't need the name that Wappler gives. You can make this whatever you want. Vids as an example. Go and create the actual connection. It's a MySQL connection, localhost. The database and the Apache web server are the same server, so they remain the same. My particular database name is wappvids underscore full CMS, I think. My username is wappvids underscore Paul. My password, and that is pretty much it. Test the connection at this point. Database is connected okay. Press OK to that and save this. So now we have a database connection. The next thing that I'm going to need is I'm going to need to add a security provider. Keep in mind here please that we can't do the security restrict step as yet. We're going to have to just start off with our standard security provider. Linked action file is not saved yet. Would you like to save it first? What it's doing is it's creating a linked file for the connection properties, which means that I don't have to create conwappvids ever again. I also don't need to create a special connection just for inserts, and another one for updates, and another one for this, and another one for that. One connection for your entire app should work just fine. If you need more than that one, obviously you might have very specific needs. You can do it, but it does just make things a bit more confusing. So let's add a security provider to this. Again, I don't have to use the Wappler name, so I can go, let's say SP for security provider for wappvids. It generates a key already. I'm going to use a database. The connection has already been put in there. Users and permissions for this. What table am I using? The user table. Automatically finds the primary key. if my MySQL table had the fields marked as username and password, it would have put them in for me. I don't use that. I'm using login and pass. I don't want to have special granular permissions for this particular thing, so I'm not going to worry about granting special permissions to different users. And that is pretty much my security provider. I'm going to save this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this little link button here. Going to do the same thing as the database connection. It's going to allow me to access it from any place within this entire app at any time that I like. You don't need multiple of them. Under normal circumstances, I would put a security restrict in here because I only want people that are already logged in order to create a new user. Under these circumstances, obviously, I'm going to create a user temporarily first, so I don't want to restrict it. I'm going to have to do 2 database inserts. One database insert is going to be into the normal users table. So insert new user using my default connection that I've got there. Insert options. As I say, this particular insert is for this user table. The second insert will be for the user data table. So the user table, I'm inserting a login and I'm inserting a password. I want this password to be hashed. So this is not really going to work for me. I'm going to have to hit the little lightning bolt. I'm going to have to go over here and click that. There, cryptographic. I want the SHA512 hash. I want to make a salt. I'm going to just call this temp salt for now. As a string, that's fine. Select, go OK to that. Second database insert is going to bring in the physical data of the user. So again, database insert. I didn't obviously have to do this way. I decided to do it this way because obviously sometimes you don't know how much user data you're going to have, and it's not like you need the person's birthday and their dog's name and their grand's name at all times. Most of the time you only are going to use their username and their password for 90% of your actions. If you need the extra data, it is available though. Insert options, the user data table this time. Again, it doesn't bring in the primary key. It brings in the F name, L name, email, C date. C date is creation date. This in MySQL, I have made it as a default of whatever the date and time is at the time that it's entered. So I don't require this. I don't want that in there. This UID over here. This is the foreign key that links back to the main table. Now, if this insert over here inserted, I know it's obviously going to insert on line 1 in this particular case, but let's just say that it was inserting on line 32. I need this to also be 32. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tell this insert to go and look at what the number is going to be, come back to this one and tell it what that number is going to be so it inserts it. So I don't want this post value. It's not going to come from my form. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that I want the ID from int new user. Okay, so that's how that is going to be set up. Go OK to that. Save this file. That is really all that I need for this particular file. I won't create my login step just yet. Let's actually go and make up this file quickly. So I'm going to go to my file structure and I'm going to do what I like to do, which is create all my folders as they're going to be in real life straight away. So I'm going to have an admin area, and within this admin area I'm going to have some files. So let's create a file. One is going to be create user, actually these, I prefer dashes in these, user.php. The second file is going to be create file login.php. And I assume on the front end of the site, if we're not dealing with the back end, on the front end of the site, I'm going to always generally have an index.php file, which I can just put here for now quickly. So there's my index.php, which I'll obviously deal with later. Sorry, I named this a bit incorrectly. Made it login instead of login. Okay, we're going to the create user PHP file first. Very simple. It's added already all the different things that it needs for the Bootstrap and the frameworks, as I told it to do within the project settings over here. I'm going to go to app, container. Inside the container we put a row, inside the row we put a column, inside the column we want to do a generator and we want a form generator. Now, as you noted, I have not gone here and selected data and then selected server connect data. I don't need to tell it about this script existing whatsoever at this point in time, because I'm going to do it through here. So the server action for this is going to be add a user, select that. I'm not going to populate it, I'm manually populating it. It's not a multi-record. I don't want it to add on line 1, line 2 and line 3 of my database simultaneously. I want one row inserted into my database. Help texts, I'm sure you all know what that is. Form rows is a class within Bootstrap 4, and it literally just makes the padding and the margin around all the form inputs a little bit smaller, so it's more compact. So I like to use form rows personally. The labels you can set to whatever you like. These names must remain as they are here. The types you can obviously change to whatever you want, and the values you could put in preset values if you had a preset value. In our case, obviously I don't need one. The password type we know is going to be password, so it puts in little asterisks. The email we know is going to be an email. The rest of this seems fine. The save over here, I don't like the name save. I'm just going to call it create user. And let's just tidy these up a bit. And that should be fine. Don't need any values in there. Save that. It generates a form on my page. It's a submit form. It already has an action connected to the actual form. If you don't like the name, I suggest now is when you change it. So I'm going to go SCF for server connect form, so it's easy to know where it comes from. And I'm going to call this my SCF. Let's look at the server action. I like to try and make these the same. Add a user. So SCF add a user tab out of that. Okay, that all seems fine. Last name, first name, password, username. That's fine. Great. Let's save this file at this point. What you will notice is that it's put in its own app ID. I'm not quite sure where it got that from or how it's done it. It never used to do that before, but I'm happy with that because it's something that I often used to forget. I'm just going to put a title in here. Create a user, whatever the title needs to be. Save this file. Let's go to the physical website itself. Sorry, I'll have to drag this across. Wappler.com. Okay, so there is. Sorry, I don't want it as a tab. Actually, let's do exactly that. Let's make it a tab. wappvids.com/admin/ you can see I was playing around a little bit. What is the name of this? This is create-user.php. create-user.php. Enter to that. Okay. Username, can make it whatever you want. So in this case, let's just call it test user. It could actually have spaces if you wanted. In this particular case, I mean, most people use the email address as the username. It's fully up to you if you want to do that. It does obviously ensure that you have unique usernames 99% of the time. But under these circumstances, let's just go test user, put a password. I'm going to make it test password. First name, let's make it Bill. Last name Gates. Email test@wappvids.com. I'm going to call up my inspector over here before I actually do this. Network, make sure I'm on XHR, click create user. It doesn't turn red, which means it's okay. It's got a 200 over there. I've got test user, test password, Bill Gates, test@wappvids.com. That was what was sent through. Go to my database, look at the table user, ID2 test user with the password hashed in there. Go to the user data table. There is the same number 2. As you can see, if I hover over it, it shows me that that is for test user. Bill Gates, test@wappvids. It's put in the creation date and it's got its own unique ID. This didn't have to be 2. This could have been 12 and that could have been 2. It really doesn't matter in this case. So that is the first section done, and literally, as I say, that was just to hash the password to start. When this is the final version, what I'm going to be doing is going here, and I'll actually do it now because I've already got a user in there, so I can use that to do it. I'm going to add a security restrict, which is this, so the person has to be logged in order to do it. And let's save that. Close down this page. I don't even need it open. I'm going to create a login script now. So add an action file. Let's call this user_login. And what does the login require? Well, it's going to require a connection to my database to go and check things. I'll pick up my connection from there. Security provider. I don't want that one. I'm going to pick up the one that I've already got, which chooses everything correctly already. And I need to go to the security provider step and say I want a security login. Now the only thing that is not going to work in this particular case right now as it stands, because everything is correct as it is right now, but this password is hashed. So when it does the login, it's going to have to take my plain text password that I put in the login field, or the password field should I rather say. It's then going to have to hash my password that I've just entered, and then it will test the 2 hashed codes against each other. Obviously the salt has to be the same on these. So let me save this. I'm going to go here and just check what salt I used because I cannot remember. Temp salt. Okay, go here, go to the login, go to the password, tell it that I want to add the cryptographic to this, which is the SHA512, put in the same salt, temp salt, select, save. That is my entire login step done. I shouldn't need to do anything more to this whatsoever. So let's go and choose the file that we made for this, login.php. Now this is going to be sending a username and a password and a remember me field. It's not an insert, it's going to be basically just checking it against what's there. Under normal circumstances, I suppose most people would think that you would need to build out the form manually first. You don't really have to. You can actually use the Bootstrap 4 form generator for it anyway, and I'll show you how now. So let's just make a title for this. User login. Obviously you don't have to do this. This is just my own pedantic ways. I'm going to create a container. Inside the container a row. Whoops, clicked the wrong place. Inside the row a column. Inside the column, what do I want? I want the generator, Bootstrap 4 form generator. I'm not going to be bringing the action in from the login.php. I'll show you what would happen if I did. It's not actually going to work, but just so you can see for yourselves. It's going to come up with this. No global input fields found in this action file. Please select one with global actions input defined. You really don't need to do this. Let's close out of there. We'll go back to the generator, go back to the form generator. Don't add it in whatsoever. We're not populating it with anything. We're going to add our help text, we're going to add our form rows, and we're going to build our own form. The first field is going to be called username. The label for that is going to be called whatever, login, let's say. The type is text, the value is whatever the value is. So it's going to be whatever the value of the name field is. 2 is going to be password. These names are obviously specific. I'm tying back to the exact names that were in the login step from the server connect side. The label for this is going to be password, could be anything obviously. The type for this is going to be password, no value. Number 3, I need a remember me field. This is literally called REMEMBERME. And I can say here, keep me logged in, exclamation point. And over here, this is going to be a checkbox. And the only difference here is that I want a value of 1. 1 is true, 0 is false. This saves a cookie onto the user's browser that lasts for 30 days or something in general. You can set the timing to a different amount. If you don't put this 1 here, it won't save the cookie because you are saying remember me is not actually true. So that's how this needs to be. Number 4, I'll just call this save, but in reality the button name that I want the user to see is going to be log me in, whatever, and this is going to be a submit. Go OK to that, that should be fine. It generates a form. I don't want this little legend piece over here. This legend does have a width of 2, which is what keeps this nicely in line. So in reality, if I took it away completely, it's obviously going to blank it out. So I'm rather just actually going to go to code here for my purposes, and I'm just going to take this label, the legend over here, and I'm just going to clear it out. It's probably not the right way to do it, but that's the way I'm doing it. At this point, the password is going to be hashed when it gets to the server connect side. Everything is kind of correct. The only problem at this point is obviously I don't like my name of this, so let's call it SCF login. In fact, let me check what the server connect file was called. User login. So let's just make it the same. Makes it easier later on. User login. What else does this form require? It's going to require an action that it's set to. So we've got to now select our actual action that we've created. User login. save. This form currently is not going to redirect to anywhere. It's not going to give any JavaScript error messages. It's not going to do any of that currently. It's just a very basic form. Let's save this. And I'm going to go to my site. And let's just, sorry, I've got a memory issue, login.php. So let's make another window, let's say, and we'll take this. I know it's very lazy, and we'll just change this to login. Again, let's call up our inspector. I want the network area of the inspector on XHR. The username for this user was test user, and it was test password. So test user, test password. Keep me logged in on, log me in. Comes up red. Let's see. 401 unauthorized. Let's see what the problem is. Test user, test password. I've got one over there. Okay, let's see what I've done. Not worried about that. Test user. Let's hope I made this test password. As far as I can recall, I did. Tell you what, just for the sake of this, let's make another user. Test user 2, and I'm just going to make sure that this was TESTPASSWORD. Bill 2, gates 2, test 2, sorry, test 2, create a user. Okay, I can't add the user because I've added the security restrict step. I cannot remember if I've made that password correct. Let's just quickly go back to Wappler here. We'll go back to the add a user, take out the security restrictor so we can get past this quickly. Sorry. Dump that, save that. Go back to my file, refresh the file. Test user 2, test password, bull 2, gates 2, test 2 at wapvids.com. Create a user, which creates it, user login, test user 2, TESTPASSWORD, login. Now suddenly the login goes through. So as you can see, I must have had the passwords different between the two. If I look at this, it shouldn't be that difficult for me to actually see. You can see that they are certainly, I must have made a mistake when typing in test password, which is why that happened. Obviously you see the trouble with that if you're not very careful. It's quite a pain to go backwards and forwards. Okay, if I had to put in the wrong credentials, I should get a black one still that is still showing as correct, but it shouldn't log me in. Let's just refresh this, put in some rubbish, keep me logged in. 401 unauthorized, so that is correct. So as you can see, we're looking for the unauthorized section of this. Let's add a little bit of JavaScript to this in order to catch the unauthorized event. Let's just go from the form. We're going to go to the dynamic event. We want the server connect event. We know that it's an unauthorized. Sometimes it does take a while for this to pick up. I'm just going to click the form again. Go here. I cannot add a JavaScript event at this point. And the reason why I can't add it is because I haven't added the browser component. So let's just cancel out of here. I'm going to add a browser component right here. Component, browser. I don't need to touch it. I don't need to change anything on it. I could change the ID if I wanted, but it is a sort of a dummy container that sits there. It takes no on clicks, no on submits, no real anything. So there's my form. Let's go back here to here. I'm going to call in the browser alert for the unauthorized. What do I want the alert to say? This in single quotes. So I've got single quote, and inside the two single quotes I'm going to put whatever message I like. I don't think that there's any JavaScript standard that says that your message has to be X, Y, or Z, even though if there was a standard it would kind of be helpful, especially for browser translations for error messages, etc. So I'm making up my very own one over here. The alerts is just going to say you entered the wrong details as an example. Okay, select that. So that's my alert for that. Let's save this. Refresh over here. Put in incorrect stuff. You entered the wrong details. Click OK to that. Go back to Wappler. At this point, we want this to redirect the user to somewhere else. We don't want it to just stay obviously on the login page. Most of my sort of systems have some form of a dashboard page, so I'm going to actually create one over here. Create file dashboard.php, and all I'm going to do, I need to obviously make sure that page physically exists on the server. So I'm going to have to double click it first, allow all the jQuery and that to be added to it, and at a minimum I'm going to have to save this, otherwise it was never uploaded to the server. I would have gone and put in a go to event on my login page and it would have tried to go to a page that doesn't exist obviously. So that's all that I needed to do there. Here I'm going to add another dynamic event. This time the server connect event is going to be success. So on a successful login, what do I want it to do? I want it to use the browser go to. Again, in single quotes, I'm going to select where I want this to go to. In my situation, I want it to go to the root directory, look for admin directory, go up a directory, and I wanted to look for dashboard.php. Tab out of there, save my file, go back to testing section. We know that the JavaScript alert works when it's incorrect. Test user 2, test password, keep me logged in, login. Takes the login event, it takes me to the dashboard page. Obviously this is a Chrome thing where it does that and says whatever, and that is pretty much it. That is your login script actually done. So if we want to continue, I don't know what timing we're sitting at here, but anyway, most of my videos are quite lengthy, so you can stop at this point or you can continue if you want to. But the sort of changes I need to make is the user login is correct as is, the add a user, I'm going to put back the security restrict step over here because I obviously don't want people doing it that shouldn't be able to do it. Save that. It then takes them to a dashboard page. The dashboard page could in essence pull some data from where it is. So we could add that. I just want to go through and add a few bits and pieces here. So Let's see, on the dashboard page, it's already brought in all the jQuery, etc. Let's just bring in the security ID so you guys can see how that works. So let's start off here. I'm going to go to blocks. I'm going to go to navigation. I want this, that's great, brand menu social. And let's just quickly set up a few bits and pieces here. So home button, yeah, that can pretty much change to, let's say, dashboard. The link for dashboard is going to be from the root directory admin /dashboard.php. Tab out of there. Target can remain the same. The about and contact obviously don't really work, so what I'm going to do is on here I'm going to go after that. I'm going to add a nav drop down. I'm going to delete the about piece. I'm going to just have to refresh this so it can pick up my changes. I'm going to delete out the contact piece. The drop down I'm just going to call something like admin rather. Inside the drop down I have all these drop down menus. I want this to be something like add a user. Where's this actually going to go? It's going to go to /admin /create -user.php to match that over there. Tab. The second one over here, obviously we haven't made up another page for this as yet, but this is going to be something like add a video, let's say. I'll leave it as hash at the moment because that page obviously doesn't exist. I haven't chosen what to do as yet, so we'll get back to that part when we're ready to. This over here, let's just error this out. I don't want this first nav item. I don't want the second nav item. I want the third one. I'm going to make this text over here log out as a button. This link over here, you could in essence leave it as hash if you wanted. Personally, I like to use this bit of JavaScript code that has been around for hundreds of years. JavaScript : void, add a 0 inside there, end it off with a semicolon. So it's JavaScript : void, a 0 in parentheses with a semicolon, which pretty much means it do nothing, do absolutely nothing. Don't add a hash at the end of my URL, don't do a thing, just pretend it doesn't exist. On here you can see that it's got this Facebook F I don't want on there, so I'm going to take this font awesome icon off that and just make it a logout button. Let's change the background color of this to something like dark. Let's change the color of the text to light, and that is pretty much it for the logout button. I need a logout script. I'm going to save this. And again, this is really just to prove that these two areas are separate areas, because I know that it gets confusing. I found it confusing myself. I'm going to create a user _logout script. Okay. For the user logout, let's go through. What are we going to need for this? Inside steps, we don't need a database connection as far as I can tell. We just need a security provider. We choose our actual security provider, and we need in the security provider a security logout, which is that. Save that. We don't have to restrict this down. The person should already be logged in by the time they see the logout button. I suppose you could if you really wanted to, but to be honest with you, I don't see much of a point in it. So let's go back to our dashboard over here. We need to make the logout button actually perform a logout. Currently, the dashboard page that I'm on now does not know that I have created the user logout script. So we're going to have to go to data, server connect. We can change this to whatever we want. SC, in my case, it's not SCF because it's not a form, so SC for server connect. And I'll name it the same as my script, user log out. We have to add an action for this. What action are we going to run? The logout action. We don't want this to auto load when the page loads up. Otherwise, obviously, we're just going to get logged out as it opens. So we have to choose the no auto load on that. Just a sort of a note. If you want this logout page or this logout button or this navigation on 20 pages, even if you had to put it into an includes file, you are going to have to, on every page that you want to use it, you're going to have to bring in the server connect data connection. The ID doesn't have to be the same on every page. Obviously, it needs to link to the same script on every page, and it has to have the no auto load on every page. So otherwise, it's obviously not going to know what to do with that. What do we want to do? On click of this actual button, we wanted to do something. The on click event for this button, which don't know why it's already there actually, but we wanted to load the on click event over there. Nothing to add to that whatsoever. Select. It will now log out. It'll run that script. And the problem is, obviously, now we want it to go back to the login page. So we need a go-to event on there. We can't access the properties of a go-to event until such time as we have added in the browser component. So there, browser, as I said before, you can leave the ID the same, you can change it, whatever you want to do. What I would suggest at this point is that these on-click events on the actual button itself, the problem kind of comes in with these events is that they run simultaneous to one another. So if we went to this on-click event and we said, you know what, at the same time as this on-click event, we want to add a second event, and the second event that we want to add is the browser go-to, so it's right over there. These are going to run in parallel to one another, and you can't really tell which one your server is going to run faster. So you need to somehow add some order of precedence almost to these. So the first thing that we want to happen is we want it to load that script, which means that the script has a return. So we can then track the return of that script. So what we then do is we go to this logout section. We say, okay, on click, it's going to go here and it's going to run this, which is running through here. On success of this, we then want the browser to redirect somewhere. So we click on that. The dynamic event for that is a server connect. It's going to be a success event. And what do we want to happen on success? We want it to do a browser go to. And in this go to, we are going to choose the root directory to admin to /, and I think that this was, sorry, I actually can't remember. Let's check. It's going to go to login.php. Let's just make sure that we do that again. Go to there, here in single quotes /admin /login.php. Tab out of that. Save. Let's go to our page quickly, and we are on our dashboard over here still. Let's just refresh this, which will bring in the navigation bar for us hopefully. There it is over there. There's no errors within here so far. Dashboard I can see is going to take me to dashboard. Just wait for it to spin around. My internet's going a bit slow today by the looks of things. The admin, I've got the add a user, the add a video, something else here. Click the logout button. The user logout script runs. It seems to be running correctly, and it's busy redirecting the browser at the moment back to the user login page. Okay. If I had to go to the dashboard page manually right now, I know that I have literally just destroyed the cookie that is being held in the browser to say that there is a successful login. So because that cookie has now been destroyed, I shouldn't be able to go and actually see the dashboard page. Well, under good circumstances. So if I go to the dashboard, I shouldn't see anything, but I am going to see it, which is obviously a problem. Now, a lot of people on the forum I see are going and using show hide and showing and hiding logout buttons and changing them to login buttons, etc., which is fine. However, obviously the show hide through this area over here, you could still go to something and make it not hidden if you wanted to. So you would rather be better off using things like conditions, to be honest. But let's just give you an example. I could take this navbar brand and I could add a style to this of display none, and it would go away. And obviously the person could go in there, see that that's your button, and they could do that and bring it back, and they would have their full functionality back. So the show hide is for very specific circumstances, under my opinion anyway. So let's go back to my page, and what we want to do is we want to go to the main app and we want to add a security provider enforcer. What this will do is, obviously, if the user is not logged in and they don't have a cookie set or whatever it may be, they are going to get kicked back to wherever I tell them to get kicked back to. So I'm going to turn on security restrict. The security provider is the same throughout. Where do I want that person to go back to? I want them to go back to the login page, and again back to the login page. Obviously you can make two different things. So if they're unauthorized, it goes somewhere else. If they are just not logged in whatsoever, it goes somewhere else. In my case, I really don't mind them going to the same place for both. So let's save this, go back to our site. As we know, I'm not currently logged into here. I clicked the logout button, which destroyed the login credentials. If I click here, you can see I was on dashboard. It takes me back to login. Let's just show you that one more time. Dashboard, it takes me back to login. I don't even see the dashboard page. I can't go through elements. I can't change anything to make it work. If I put in the correct details, test user 2, test password, keep me logged in, log me in, it'll take me to the dashboard. The security provider enforcer will check that everything's correct, and it keeps me on the actual dashboard. So that is how the security provider enforcer works. Again, that is not a do it once on one page and every single page just takes that same thing. You have to add the security provider enforcer to every single page that you want enforced. So my login page, obviously I don't want that enforced, but the create user page, I should really have the exact same thing. Obviously there are quicker ways to bring in the exact same things using server-side includes on your navigation. Keep in mind, if you do use a server-side includes and you have selected only the navigation, you're still going to have to bring in the browser component over here. You're still going to have to bring in the logout component over here. The server connect data back to this logout procedure. otherwise that's not going to work. But yeah, that the video is getting a bit long, so I'm going to cut it a bit shorter and show you a different section here. All I want to show you is that obviously we are logged in with a security ID at the moment, and so obviously you can use that security ID to get your data on your actual page. So what I would suggest is that we start off again with our server side. Again, just to be pedantic, I'm going to close everything so you can see, and I'm going to say here that this is it's going to be a database query, so it's q user q logged in user data as an example. Okay, this makes it nice and easy for me to know exactly what each and every single step is doing. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do a database connection. The connection is that. I'm going to do a security provider on here. Choose my security provider. I'm going to do a security restrict on here. Obviously, the reason I'm doing this, I don't want people, certainly don't want people being able to query my data without the correct credentials. So this is locking it down server side and client side at the same time. So everything is very nice and secure. I could use a standard database query. The user credentials is one row in my database. It's only ever going to pull out a single row. So I'm going to use the single query. Change the name if I want. Let's change it to single query user data query builder. I could bring in just this table if I wanted to. The foreign key is the same as the security ID. However, the security ID really is referencing the main ID of this table, so I'm going to do it the proper way to show you. It may not be the way I would have done it in production, but just to show you, bring in the second table. I'm going to use an inner join. I don't need an alias. I'm going to choose the foreign key ID from the second table is equal to what? The user ID of the first table. Go OK to that. What do I want to bring in? I want to bring in the person's login, not the password. I'll bring in the ID as well, actually. Just move that above. I'll bring in the user's first name. I'll bring in their last name. I'll bring in their email. I'll bring in the date. The condition for this is going to be that the user ID is equal to what? The security provider identity. Go OK to that. Go OK to that. Save. Go back to our file side. Q logged in user data. Go back to our dashboard. We need to bring in this data first. So we need to have a second one here. Data server connect. Again, we can call it whatever we want. SC logged in user data. The name here does not have to match the name that I did over there. That's really just for my own pedantic ease of use. Over there. No auto load. We want that to remain off as it is because we do want this to load this data as soon as the page loads up. So that's perfect. After the header, I'm going to add a container. In this container, add a row. In the row, add a column. In the column, I can add some content. Let's say that I want to add a title. Now, I could double click this title and I could put in whatever I want to put in from there. I can put in dynamic data if I want. So let's just do it both ways actually. So I'm just going to say let's just go welcome XXX space XXX. which is going to take the first name and the last name. I'm going to highlight that, hit my dynamic data picker, logged in data user, going to take the F name over there. I'm going to double click this one. I'm going to take the last name here, data there, there's the last name. Okay, and just enter to that. I know that it sort of goes away over there. It's quite normal. If you unclick this app connect mode, then it actually shows it correctly. It's not going to show you the data that it's pulling in over here because Wappler itself as a program is not logged in. There's no cookie saved in Wappler, so therefore it can't actually show it. There is a way to show it, and I'll show you how to do that in a few short moments. But for now, even in preview mode with App Connect on, you are still not going to actually see that data because you are not logged in. So let's just go and add something more here. Let's go after that. I'm going to show you a different way of doing this. Let's say that we add in a p tag. And instead of typing over it and choosing our dynamic data the way that I did, you can also do something like this. You can go to dynamic attributes, you can go display, you can go inner text, and you can choose a binding from here. So you could go there. So yeah, that's correct. Let's say that I want the person's user ID. Select that. That'll then show literally just a number, which is the user's ID. I could add more to that if I wanted to. I could go and change this to a template rather, and I could make sure that I'm going after that, all that data. I could add plus with a single quote and a space plus, and then I could choose something else. So I could say, okay, that the login, and it adds that as a secondary sort of section to that. I could then go and continue with that if I wanted to. You can see that it can get a little bit weird. I'm going to show you in the code view just so you can see how it's come in. It's chosen these curly braces over here for this plus condition, which I actually don't want. So I'm just going to quickly check that out, because that's not exactly what I wanted. I'm going to change this to expression quickly and just see what happens. Let's dump everything out of it. Take the ID. After the ID, I'm going to add a plus, single quote, space, single quote, plus. I'm going to take the login. Okay, that's more correct. Plus, single quote, plus. Bring in the email, plus single quote, space, single quote, plus. This is just concatenating this with a space in between. There, select, save that. Let's go back to the browser. Let's refresh this. I think I'm still logged in. Welcome build 2 gates 2 3 test user 2 test 2 webvids. As you can see, it's pulled in the correct stuff. It's test user 2, and it's pulled in the build 2, the gates 2, the test 2, and 16, 14, 54. Let's just make sure 16, 14, 54. So it's definitely pulled in the correct data according to what it should be. You could stop at this point. The only thing I'm going to try and add to this quickly is how to get to that session variable if you wanted to, using PHP. If you are more of a PHP coder and need access to it, there are certain ways that you can do that. So, and I'm going to do it very, very simply. I'm just going to echo, and I'm going to echo the $_session, open and close square brackets, single quotes inside there, semicolon at the end. And this is going to pretty much be called whatever this is here. So whatever you named that, that is what you're going to use, and you're going to add ID at the end, capital R, lowercase d. That's all that you need to do. SP_WAP_vids, capital R, lowercase d, save. Go back to the browser, refresh, and there it is there. So you can get to that that data directly through PHP and use it within your PHP scripts if that's what you want. But in this case, that should be enough. So you can go through pretty much anything you want. Let's just add another user very quickly. Make sure that that script is actually still working. Test user 3, test password. Let's call ball 3, Kate's 3, test 3 at webvids.com. Create user. Add a user has worked. Obviously it's not redirecting us anywhere. If you wanted to, you could add a browser go to event, not on the on click of this button, but on the success of this form inserting to the database. But otherwise that seems to work. Let's go back to our dashboard a moment. Let's go and log out. And let's use our new credentials, test 3, no, sorry, I've already forgotten what I chose, memory like a sieve, test user 3, test user 3, test password. Keep me logged in if you want to, doesn't have to be clicked. And as you can see, it changes to 4. It's now test user 3, test 3. The time has changed, and that's also a 4. The last thing that I will show you that I did speak about earlier was the design view in Wappler, and how obviously this is not physically logged in, and therefore you cannot see your data. So it works a bit like a browser. If you are with your App Connect on, with your browser on, and you had to click this logout button, it would do exactly what your browser would do. So it would log you out. In which case you could go test user 3, test password, keep me logged in, and log me in, and it would redirect you back to the exact same spot as your dashboard, which now actually shows you the data, and you can work with it still, because you can turn off the preview mode and you can literally access various parts of this. So let's turn off the preview, turn that back on, and now all of a sudden you can go and change things around. So, but now your preview obviously should work. Let's just quickly double check this. Sorry, preview off again. Refresh my data, preview on. So it's a little bit finicky, but it does kind of work, and at least it allows you to do certain things while you're going, and you can still access stuff and still create new stuff, but actually see what you're doing, because it has now saved the cookie within here. I didn't have to open up the login page in order to do it. I did it all through here and pretended that I was in a browser. So I hope that that helps you a little bit.